Hey Helen, thanks for joining. It'd be great if you could start by telling us a little bit about UFI and yourself.
Absolutely. Hi, Alex. Really nice to be here. So I'm Helen Gironi, and I am Director of Ventures at UFI Ventures. Essentially, invest in early stage businesses, technology businesses that are selling into organizations and directly to individuals, selling upskilling and skilling for adults over the age of 16. So through colleges, through workplaces, or directly to the individual. The ability to take on new skills, the ability to understand pathways into careers, understand where there are skills gaps within the economy, and for businesses to plug skills gaps and find good quality people to bring into the business.
And where do you see these skills gaps most today?
Really interesting question. So in many different areas, particularly in some sectors. So for example, the care sector, we see there being really a problem with sort of low perceptions of the quality of work within the sector through really a lack of information probably, and that being an issue. With obviously there's a great need to bring good quality people, skills into that sector. There's a huge demand for skills in that sector. Also, through the transitioning economy, so the switch from non-renewable energy to renewables, there's a sort of upskilling piece that needs to happen there, and a growing number of people that are needed within the sector. There's been a bit of a sort of stop-start in that sector, and it's difficult to have visibility really on the numbers of people that are going to be needed. But it does seem to be relatively difficult to transition from non-renewable sources to renewable sources of employment, essentially, jobs within the sector. There were a number of others. There's also sort of a geographical piece. It's obviously easier to get employment in certain areas of the country. So there's definitely a piece there helping people in rural environments and coastal environments to find good quality work and progress in that work. So those are just a few areas that we're interested in, but there are many of them.
And how do you strike the balance between finding companies that have got a good financial future as well as being socially impactful?
Really, really interesting question. We see the two going in hand really nicely. So we look for businesses that are very commercially minded and ambitious, and but hold impact at the core of what they're doing. So they are looking to benefit individuals and companies, and hold delivering to the customer as the most important thing they do. And I think that should be the case for all companies. So I don't think there are lots of companies that we consider to be sort of to have that alignment of impact and financial ambition. We see the two going really hand in hand. So every sale that you're making essentially has a positive impact, and as we look at the companies within our portfolio, we've made investments in 18 businesses. That is the case for all of them. Every sale that they make has a positive result, influence on an individual's life, or a company's prosperity. Yeah, there are many businesses out there that are doing that.
The 18 businesses you've invested in, what do the founders have in common?
Well, another really good question. What do they have in common? I think it's quite a tough life being a founder of an early stage business. It's a very sort of uncomfortable but really exciting place to be. I'm sure there are many things that sort of concern those founders. They're in charge of the livelihoods of their employees. They are often quite cash constrained businesses. So looking into the future is quite difficult. Finding resources to deliver on the work and finding the resources to do everything that they want to do is quite difficult. And they have difficult decisions to make in terms of where they spend their money. They're typically very driven individuals, have a huge amount of energy, have a huge amount of ambition and optimism. Founders tend to be very optimistic people. I don't think they'd sort of be able to contemplate the idea of running their own business without that optimism that they're going to be able to overcome these barriers. And yeah, I think that's probably a commonality. They're also a very generous bunch. They share information with each other. And when I've introduced people to founders, I'm always amazed at how in a busy day they always manage to make time to have those conversations with the new individual on the block and help them and share the expertise that they've got, which is hugely encouraging and such a big part of a founder's journey. I think being able to rely on the expertise of people that are just a bit further along the pathway than they are.
And interestingly, you touched on sharing of information. How important do you think that is between founders, between investors? Because often some people can be a bit apprehensive of sharing information under the impression that it could be given away to their competition and that sort of thing. How do you see that?
Well, when we first talk to businesses, we have to be extremely careful about, not being able to disclose any of the information that we're hearing, and the fact that that information is very valuable. We're really, really mindful of that. And we know that founders won't approach us about their fundraisings if they think that we don't take that really, really seriously, and we do. But I think as that relationship develops, learn to trust us. So the level of disclosure basically grows and grows throughout the sort of investment due diligence process. And then when we make the investment, we sit on the board of the companies we invest in. So we are party to those discussions that are happening at board level. So very strategic, a huge amount of information that would be very valuable to other people. But we've built up that level of trust, and they know that we will hold that, not disclose it to anybody. And I think that's really important to have that level of trust between investors and investees, because we can't add value back to the investee companies without really understanding the challenges and opportunities that they're facing. So being party to that information is critical to being able to add value. But fortunately, our portfolio companies do open up and share that information with us.
And how do investors like yourself add value?
So I'd say being involved in a sub sector is really crucial to being able to add value. So we know a lot of the clients that our companies are pitching to. We have a really good understanding of the landscape, so the other businesses that are operating in the sector, and how businesses compare to that, how unique their offering is, how other people have performed well within the sector by doing various things essentially, and how companies we meet can learn from that, learn from what's been done before and is currently being done. We also have key strategic partnerships. So for example, we're working with the RSA at the moment on the Digital Badging Commission, trying to essentially talk to the greater good within the sector, people that sort of live and breathe this, about what will make the digital badging successful within this country, learning from other models abroad. So, we bring that sort of sector understanding and relationships with the, movers and shakers within the sector and the expertise that they bring. So, for example, JISC, the Association of Colleges, Resolution Foundation, and other people within the sector expertise, so we can introduce our portfolio companies to those individuals and really feed through the understanding that we have about the sector and our ability to sort of shine a light on what is working well within the sector and how our portfolio companies can benefit from that knowledge and those introductions.
What would you say is working well in the sector? Is there anything that stands out that's interesting at the moment?
AI is you must hear this a lot, but it's a massive opportunity within the sector, and we're seeing great efficiencies within the portfolio and other businesses. So the price of content creation is dramatically reduced. The speed of tech development is dramatically reduced. We're not seeing yet the sort of headcount of businesses within our portfolio being impacted, but it probably will at some point. But more, we're seeing them achieve more with less, essentially, and be able to go out with a better market offering, a more personalized learning experience, and and lower operating cost, essentially. So it's really exciting for both the companies operating in the sector and the consumers as well.
I see a lot of socially impactful companies, particularly EdTech, can often find it difficult to monetize because often the customers that need them most and they're going after can often be the customers that don't have the money, underprivileged communities, people who are geographically disadvantaged. How do you see yourself or EdTech or socially impact companies solving this?
It's a really knotty problem. Sort of, if I can sort of point to one example within our portfolio, a company called Caps Lock that's providing or linking up learners with a finance business that is essentially paying the upfront cost of cybersecurity training. When individuals finish the cybersecurity training course, they typically get quite a substantial uplift in their salary. When they start a new job, they're earning more than they did before. But because they haven't had to pay for the training up front, it's possible to finance it. So it's reaching a cross section of people, including people from more disadvantaged backgrounds. And they then, when they get that uplift in salary, can start paying over a period of many months the cost of the training. So it's really important. We invest in businesses whose products are accessible. That's a really fundamental principle for us, that this isn't just, the products and services aren't just reaching individuals who are on higher salaries and can afford it. There are sort of many ways that companies can do that, but it's a prerequisite for the businesses in our portfolio.
The most common mistakes you see founders make when pitching for investment?
Interesting question. I think possibly not opening up to investors, and I absolutely understand why before they get to know an investor that some people choose to do that. But I think it's really important that over time that relationship builds and that disclosure of information, the good and the bad about the business, an honest conversation is really important. And every investor knows that there are weak spots and strong parts of a business. We absolutely don't expect businesses to be the sort of the final product and flawless, but we get quite nervous if we don't have those sort of honest conversations and hear about the problems, but just only the opportunities and the good bits.
And on the contrary, what would make a pitch stand out to you? What would a great pitch look like? Or maybe an example of one you've seen?
Yeah, so a very clear plan and credible plan of how revenue is going to build, a company that knows its customer base or potential customer base and absolutely understands the problems that those customers are facing and why therefore they need to buy their solution. Really good understanding of the barriers to selling, so how to make sure that once you've sold a product, it's adopted, and the levers that a company has to enabling that. And really sort of an understanding of how they fit into the landscape, who are their closest competitors, what they are doing differently, and how they are best placed to essentially sort of keep that competitive edge. What is it that's stopping or enabling their competitors from moving into their space, and a really solid understanding.
And obviously a lot of founders will be doing it for the first time. Is there any mistakes you see them make, any common mistakes?
If I was a first-time founder, I think there's so many mistakes I'd make, and I think it's a very you learn on the job, right? It's something that you've never done before. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's by making those mistakes that you really learn. So yeah, absolutely. I'm sure there are some common mistakes. I'm just thinking of what they are really. I think recruitment can be difficult for companies. When people recruit, they often recruit after they've raised funding, and they're under sort of, time pressure essentially to grow the sales, and so they want to get through the hiring process quickly. And I think it's something that has to happen well at the right pace, because it's so important to find the right person. And I think misrecruiting can be a huge distraction going forward, and also a missed opportunity. So we do see quite a lot of that. And I think there's a natural once you hit the sort of 30 person head count, the sort of systems, the structure that you need to have in place is very different to having fewer than 30. And I think that can often be a bit of a problem, making sure that those structures are in place and you really understand what headcount your business needs, where you need to sort of position people within the business, and whether those people are achieving the sort of goals that you set them. So being able to manage a larger workforce, I think, can quite often be problematic. And I think sort of not also move as quickly as is needed, and the competition catching up. So those are a few sort of pitfalls.
Last one, if you had any one piece of advice or information or any recommendation you'd be given to an early stage founder, particularly in the social impact space, what would it be?
Really good question. I would say find an investor that is a good fit and start talking to them early about what they want to see from the business, at which point they'd invest, what they'd be looking for at that point, how they think you differ from the competition. Have regular, if you can build up a relationship with that investor, have regular conversations, because I think investors can be a good source of understanding the market, and can be a good sort of sounding board, I think, for early stage businesses. So I think that's one of the things I'd focus on.
Well, great advice. And Helen Gironi, UFI Ventures, thanks very much for taking the time to talk. Appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.